5 plants are growing across 4 continents right now. 1 replaces every egg in every dessert ever baked. 1 builds pudding in 15 minutes with no heat and 5 times more calcium than milk. 1 grows chocolate from a pod on a hillside. 1 sweetens 300 times more than sugar with 0 calories. And 1 has been sitting in your kitchen your entire life while you pour it down the drain. By the end of this video, you will know all 5 and why you have never seen them in a baking aisle. Hi, I am Harry, and this is Garden Explained with Harry. The global bakery and dessert market generates over $500 billion in revenue every single year. Walk through any supermarket baking aisle in Chicago or London or Sydney and you will find cartons of AGS, blocks of butter, bags of refined white sugar lined up on both sides. Every cookie starts with that aisle. Every cake starts with a receipt. Every pudding starts with a drive to the store. The first plant has been cultivated for over 6,000 years, and it does something no chicken egg has ever done. The world calls it flaxseed. Farmers across the Ethiopian highlands have grown it since before recorded history. Fields of pale blue flowers stretch across the prairies of Saskatchewan and Manitoba in Canada today. Markets in Rajasthan and Gujarat in India sell it by the kilogram for less than the cost of a single carton of eggs. Take 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed, add 3 tablespoons of water, stir it once and set it on the counter. Within 5 minutes, the mixture transforms into a thick, viscous gel that looks and behaves exactly like a beaten egg. It binds, it leavens, it emulsifies, it holds moisture. 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed plus 3 tablespoons of water equals 1 egg in any baking recipe. Not approximately, functionally identical. That gel works in cookies, in pancakes, in muffins, in pie crusts, in banana bread, in energy balls, in raw cheesecake bases. A bag of flaxseed sits in your pantry for 6 months. You grind what you need, you mix it with water. 5 minutes later, you have as many eggs as the recipe demands. No refrigeration, no cholesterol, no expiration panic. While flaxseed binds your batter, it also delivers 53 to 57% omega-3 fatty acids, more than any fish on Earth, 255 milligrams of calcium, and nearly 400 milligrams of magnesium per 100 grams. No store-bought egg replacer does that. No chicken egg does that either. Flaxseed grows in a container on a balcony. Full sun and moderate water, nothing else. Harvest the seed pods when they turn golden brown. Dry them for a week. Store them in a jar. A single planting supplies your kitchen for an entire season. Beyond flaxseed sit 5 more plants that complete the full dessert system. Carob, tiger nut, stevia, sweet woodruff, sunflower seeds, and pumpkin seeds. Each one grows in soil. Each one replaces a purchased dessert ingredient that Western kitchens buy every single week. But first, there is another seed that does something flaxseed cannot. It builds the entire dessert by itself. No oven, no mixing bowl, no recipe at all. The world knows it as Chi-A. Aztec warriors carried small pouches of it as fuel on long marches across the valleys of central Mexico. Tarahumara runners in the Copper Canyon of Chihuahua consumed chia gel before runs covering more than 100 miles through mountain terrain. For 5,000 years, this seed has been building meals out of nothing but itself and water. Take 3 tablespoons of chia seeds, pour them into a jar with 1 cup of any liquid. Water works. Coconut milk is better. Mango juice is extraordinary. Stir once, walk away, come back in 15 minutes. The seeds have absorbed 10 to 12 times their own weight and transformed into a thick, creamy pudding. No heat, no stirring, no thickener, no sugar. A full dessert from 1 ingredient and 15 minutes of patience. Add cocoa powder and you have chocolate pudding. Add mashed banana and cinnamon and you have a breakfast parfait. Layer it with seasonal berries over a ground flaxseed crust and you have a layered dessert that rivals anything behind a bakery counter. Then there is Chi-A jam. Take any fruit. Mash it with a fork. Stir in 2 tablespoons of chia seeds per cup of fruit. Wait 15 minutes. The chia thickens it into a spreadable jam with no pectin, no cooking, and no added sugar. Fresh jam in a quarter of an hour. 631 milligrams of calcium per 100 grams. 5 times the calcium density of whole milk. All 9 essential amino acids. 60% omega-3 fatty acids. A pudding that delivers more nutrition than the dairy dessert it replaces and costs less than the plastic spoon you would use to eat the store-bought version. Flaxseed replaces the EGG. Chia builds the pudding and the jam from scratch, but neither of them can whip into stiff peaks. Neither of them can make a meringue. Neither of them can produce the light, airy structure that holds a mousse together or puts a golden crust on top of a pie. For that, you need something else entirely, and the strangest part is you already have it. The most surprising ingredient in this system is already sitting in your kitchen right now, and you have been throwing it away for years. Cooks call it aquafaba. The name means bean water. And until 2014, nobody in the Western culinary world had any idea what it could do. Open a can of chickpeas, drain the liquid into a bowl, chill it for 30 minutes, then whip it on high speed for 6 to 8 minutes. The cloudy, thin liquid transforms into white, fluffy foam. Continue whipping and it forms soft peaks. Continue further and it forms stiff peaks that hold their shape when you flip the bowl upside down. Add sugar gradually while whipping and you have meringue. Bake at 100 degrees Celsius for 90 minutes and you have crisp meringue cookies. Fold it into melted chocolate and you have mousse. Whip it with vanilla and powdered sugar and you have whipped cream without a single drop of dairy. Spread it over a pie and torch it and you have a torched meringue topping that browns and caramelizes exactly like the original. 3 tablespoons replaces 1 EGG white. 1 can of chickpeas yields enough for a full batch of meringue cookies or 2 dessert mousses. The chickpeas become dinner. The liquid becomes dessert. You do not even need the can. Cook dried chickpeas in a pot for 90 minutes. The liquid left after cooking is aquafaba. Strain it, chill it, whip it, same result. The dessert ingredient is a free byproduct of a meal you were already going to make. It freezes perfectly in ice cube trays. Fill each slot with 3 tablespoons. Every cube is 1 egg white ready whenever you need it. A freezer full of free EG whites made from leftover bean water. 1 seed that replaces every egg. 1 seed that builds its own pudding. 1 leftover liquid that turns kitchen waste to meringue. Between them, they cover every binding agent, every thickener, every cup of dairy, and every egg white in the Western dessert system. Total cost per month is less than what most households spend on eggs in a single week. But there is still chocolate. There is still sugar. There is still milk. There is still flavor. 5 more plants close every remaining gap. Walk into any grocery store tonight, pick up a tub of ice cream, turn it over, read the ingredients. You will find a code, E410. It appears on billions of food labels every single year. Ice cream, cream cheese, infant formula, salad dressings. The food industry calls it locust bean gum, sometimes carob gum, sometimes carob bean gum. The name changes, but the source does not. This additive comes from the seeds of one specific tree, the seeds, not the fruit. The industry extracts the gum from the seeds and discards the rest, the actually edible part, the nutritious part, the part that tastes like chocolate. That part was deleted from Western memory. Millions of Mediterranean families have eaten this fruit for generations. Sicilian grandmothers bake with it. Moroccan families drink it during Ramadan. Cypriot villages process it every harvest season. The knowledge never disappeared from those cultures. It only disappeared from yours. The oldest chocolate shop in Modica, Antica Dolceria Bonahuto, makes hot chocolate thickened with this same ingredient. Tourists assume they are tasting pure cacao. They are not. Here is what Western food science chose to ignore. The tree is carob, Serotonia siliqua. and its story explains both the global jewelry trade and the systematic erasure of nutritious foods from modern diets. The next time you see a diamond ring, remember this. The word carat comes from this tree. The Greek word kerasion means little horn or carob seed. Ancient Greek merchants discovered something remarkable about carob seeds. Each seed weighs almost exactly the same, 0.2 grams. Seed after seed, tree after tree, generation after generation. Today, 1 carat equals 200 milligrams. The exact weight of a carob seed. Every diamond ring on Earth carries the memory of this tree in its weight measurement. The tree that gave humanity its standard for measuring wealth became invisible while its seeds measured billions in value. The Phoenicians cultivated carob before writing existed in most of Europe. The Romans planted carob groves across their empire. Archaeological sites from Spain to Syria contain carbonized carob pods. This tree fed civilizations. Early Christians called it St. John's bread. The Gospel accounts describe John the Baptist surviving in the wilderness on locusts and wild honey. Some biblical scholars believe the locusts were not insects but locust tree pods. Carob pods. The same food that sustained a prophet became peasant food, became forgotten food, became invisible food. Spanish conquistadors carried carob to the Americas. They planted groves in Mexico and California. Mission San Diego de Alcalá still has carob trees planted in the 18th century. They continue producing pods today. 300 years of harvest from the same trees. The Spanish knew what they had brought. Their descendants forgot. Now examine what modern research has finally confirmed about its nutritional content. Carob pods contain 48 to 56% sugars, mainly sucrose, glucose, and fructose. This natural sweetness requires no processing. They contain 3 to 4% protein, higher than most fruits. Most importantly, for anyone avoiding stimulants, carob contains 0 caffeine and 0 theobromine. The compounds that make chocolate addictive and dangerous to pets do not exist in carob. The pulp contains polyphenols, tannins, flavonoids, minerals including potassium, calcium, magnesium, copper, iron, manganese, and zinc, and no gluten. A team at the University of Salerno published a comprehensive analysis in food chemistry in 2024. They documented compounds associated with antioxidant activity, gastroprotective effects, blood sugar regulation, cholesterol reduction, and cardiovascular protection. The science is not preliminary. The science is established. The applications remained ignored. A clinical study gave volunteers with high cholesterol 4 grams of carob fiber daily for 4 weeks. Total cholesterol dropped 17.8%. LDL cholesterol dropped 22.5%. Triglycerides decreased 16.3%, 4 grams, 1 month. Numbers that pharmaceutical companies spend billions trying to achieve with patentable drugs. The glycemic index tells another story. Pure sugar scores 100, white bread scores 75, carob powder scores 15 to 25. Diabetics can consume carob without the blood sugar spikes that accompany other sweet foods. The sweetness exists, the metabolic damage does not. Here's what the nursery industry does not want you to understand. You can grow this tree yourself. The process requires patience, but almost nothing else. Carob grows in USDA hardiness zones 9 through 11. Some cultivars tolerate zone 8 with protection. If you live where citrus grows, carob will thrive. Southern California, Arizona, Texas, Florida, the Gulf Coast, Hawaii, these regions can all support carob production. The tree tolerates almost any soil type. Sandy soil, clay soil, rocky soil, limestone, alkaline conditions that kill most fruit trees pose no problem for carob. The only requirement is drainage. Carob will not survive standing water. Start with seeds or start with grafted trees. Each path has consequences. Seeds cost almost nothing. You can harvest them from any carob pod. The hard seed coat requires scarification before planting. Nick the seed coat with a file or with sandpaper. Soak the seeds in warm water for 24 hours. Plant them 1 inch deep in well-draining potting mix. Germination takes 2 to 4 weeks, but here is what seed propagation means for your harvest timeline. Carob trees grown from seed take 6 to 8 years to produce their first pods, and you will not know the sex of your tree until it flowers. Carob is primarily dioecious. Male trees produce pollen. Female trees produce pods. If you plant a single seed grown tree and it turns out male, you will never harvest a single pod from it. The tree will grow beautifully. It will provide shade. It will produce no food. Commercial growers solve this problem with grafted trees. A grafted carob comes from a cutting taken from a known female tree. You know the sex before you plant. Grafted trees also fruit faster, 3 to 4 years instead of 6 to 8. The cost is higher, $20 to $50 per tree. The certainty is worth it. If you plant from seed, please plant multiple trees, 5 minimum. One male tree can pollinate many females. The wind carries the pollen, no bees required. Variety selection matters more than most growers realize. The Clifford variety produces large pods with high sugar content and excellent flavor. It originated in Australia and has become the standard for commercial production. The Santa Fe variety tolerates colder temperatures better than most. It survives brief dips into the low 20s. The Sfax variety from Tunisia produces smaller pods but in enormous quantities. The Tantillo variety from Sicily has been cultivated for centuries and carries intense sweetness that Sicilian bakers prize. Each variety has characteristics suited to different climates and purposes. Research what grows best in your region before purchasing. Finding grafted carob trees requires some effort. Most conventional nurseries do not stock them. Specialty fruit tree nurseries carry them seasonally. Online nurseries ship bare root trees during dormant season. Local Mediterranean cultural organizations sometimes coordinate group purchases from overseas suppliers. Agricultural extension offices in carob growing regions can point you toward local sources. The search takes work. The work pays dividends for a century. If no grafted trees are available, you can graft your own. Grow rootstock from seed for 2 years. Source scion wood from a known female tree. Someone in your region likely has a producing carob. Ask permission to take cuttings. The grafting technique is standard whip and tongue or cleft grafting. Any fruit tree grafting guide applies. The success rate is high for those with basic grafting experience. Spacing depends on your goals. For maximum production, plant trees 25 to 30 feet apart. Carob tolerates pruning well. You can maintain trees at 15 feet tall through annual trimming. Unpruned trees reach 30 to 50 feet over decades. The first 3 years require attention. Water newly planted trees deeply once per week during dry periods. Soak the root zone thoroughly, then let it dry completely before watering again. This encourages deep root development. After year 3, reduce watering gradually. By year 5, an established carob needs no irrigation in climates receiving more than 10 inches of annual rainfall. The tree's taproot reaches water tables that surface irrigation never touches. Fertilization is almost unnecessary. Carob fixes nitrogen through symbiotic bacteria in its root nodules. A light application of balanced fertilizer in spring during the first few years accelerates growth. After establishment, the tree needs nothing. Pests and diseases barely exist for carob. No major insect pests attack the tree in North America. No significant fungal diseases threaten it. You will not spray this tree, you will not treat it, you will simply harvest from it. Harvest timing matters. Pods ripen in late summer through fall. Ripe pods turn dark brown and dry on the tree, and they release easily when shaken. Spread tarps beneath trees and shake branches gently. The ripe pods fall, the unripe pods stay. Processing at home requires only a grinder. Remove the seeds from dried pods. Grind the remaining pulp into powder using any grain mill or high-powered blender. The resulting carob powder stores indefinitely in airtight containers, no refrigeration needed. One mature carob tree produces 200 to 400 pounds of pods annually. That yield typically provides more carob than a family can consume, but powder is only one product. The pods can be processed into carob syrup by simmering crushed pods in water for several hours, then straining and reducing the liquid. The resulting syrup has the consistency of molasses and a rich caramel sweetness. It stores for months without refrigeration. Drizzle it over pancakes, stir it into oatmeal, mix it with tahini for a traditional Mediterranean spread that predates Nutella by millennia. Carob chips can be made at home by mixing carob powder with coconut oil and a small amount of sweetener. Pour the mixture into molds. Refrigerate until solid. The result looks like chocolate chips and melts like chocolate chips, but contains none of the compounds that keep sensitive individuals awake at night. Roasting transforms carob's flavor profile entirely. Spread raw carob powder on a baking sheet. Roast at 300 degrees for 10 to 15 minutes, stirring occasionally. The heat deepens the flavor, reduces astringency, and produces notes reminiscent of dark chocolate or coffee. Different roasting times create different flavor profiles. Experiment until you find what suits your palate. The seeds you remove during processing have value too. Do not discard them. Carob seeds contain the same locust bean gum that the food industry extracts for billions of dollars in products. You can grind the seeds into a fine powder that acts as a thickening agent. Use it in homemade ice cream. Add it to smoothies for body. Incorporate it into sauces that need viscosity without dairy. The same ingredient sold to industrial food manufacturers at premium prices grows in your backyard. Now understand how this remarkably easy crop became cultural poison. The 1970s changed everything. Health food stores across America discovered carob. Carob appeared in brownies and cookies marketed as healthy alternatives to chocolate. The positioning was catastrophic. Imagine handing a child raised on Hershey bars a carob brownie and calling it chocolate. The child's expectations are calibrated to sugar, fat, caffeine, and theobromine. Carob delivers none of these. The child feels betrayed. The memory becomes trauma. The comparison was designed to fail. No substitute ever wins when measured against the original in the original's own terms. Carob positioned as fake chocolate never had a chance. It needed to be positioned as carob, a distinct food with distinct properties and distinct pleasures. But consider what carob actually tastes like when you stop expecting chocolate. Warm, earthy, naturally sweet with notes of caramel and dried fruit. Some describe hints of hazelnut. The taste stands entirely on its own when you approach it without the burden of comparison. Mediterranean cooks have always understood this. They use carob in recipes that never reference chocolate. Carob molasses drizzled over tahini. Carob syrup stirred into yogurt. The applications multiply when you stop trying to replicate something else. Consider what Cyprus has preserved while other cultures forgot. Cypriot villages produce pastelli, a confection of carob syrup and sesame seeds pressed into bars. They make carob liqueur by fermenting carob syrup with spices. They bake carob bread using flour milled from dried pods. They stir carob powder into coffee as an extender that adds sweetness without bitterness. An entire cuisine exists around carob in Cyprus. None of it references chocolate, none of it tries to be something else. It simply is what it is. The rest of the world could learn from this approach. But here is the structural reality that matters more than any single marketing mistake. The global chocolate market reached $125 billion in 2024. Chocolate requires tropical monocultures. Cocoa trees grow only in a narrow band around the equator. West Africa produces 70% of global supply. The supply chain stretches across oceans. Processing requires industrial infrastructure. Distribution requires cold chains. Each step adds cost. Each step generates profit for someone. Carob requires none of this. No tropical forests need clearing. No child labor controversies emerge from family orchards. No massive water inputs keep trees alive. A farmer with a carob grove and a basic processing setup can produce a chocolate alternative locally. Patents do not protect the pressing of a pod. A backyard grower with 5 trees and a kitchen grinder threatens no one directly, but 1,000 backyard growers threaten the narrative. 10,000 threaten the market. The child labor dimension deserves deeper examination. Major chocolate companies have promised to eliminate child labor from their supply chains repeatedly. They promised in 2001, they promised again in 2005, they promised again in 2008, and 2010, and 2015, and 2020. Each deadline passed, each promise was broken. Investigations continue to find children as young as 5 years old working with machetes on cocoa farms. The fundamental economics of cheap chocolate depend on labor that would be illegal in any consuming country. The industry cannot solve this problem because the industry is the problem. Now examine what is happening to the chocolate industry today. 2024 brought a crisis. Cocoa prices rocketed to nearly $13,000 per ton. They were 400% higher than typical prices over the previous decade. Chocolate manufacturers scrambled to reformulate. Industry analysts warned of a structural shortage. The cause was not temporary. The cause was climate. Researchers at Harvard's Salata Institute published findings in 2025. 68% of year-to-year variation in Ghanaian cocoa yields could be explained by two factors: excessive rainfall during the wet season and drought during the dry season. Both are increasing as climate patterns destabilize. Cocoa production has plunged by as much as 40% over 2 years. Aging trees cannot be replaced fast enough. Disease spreads through stressed plantations. The narrow climate window that cocoa requires is closing. Major manufacturers have already begun reformulating. Shrinkflation appeared first. The same wrapper now contains less product. Then ingredient substitution, vegetable fats replacing cocoa butter. Then sugar increases to compensate for reduced cocoa content. The chocolate bar your parents ate no longer exists. The name remains. The product has already changed. Most consumers have not noticed. They will. Now consider what carob offers. Carob is a xerophyte, a drought-resistant species. While cocoa requires precise rainfall, carob thrives where most crops fail. The tree develops deep root systems that access water unavailable to shallow-rooted plants. Carob requires virtually no irrigation once established. In regions where farmers struggle to keep orchards alive, carob simply grows. Carob resists fire. The tree's thick bark retains moisture. High leaf moisture content prevents ignition. While resinous pines explode into flame, carob stands resist. Mediterranean countries increasingly view carob not just as a crop, but as a firebreak. Carob trees live for a century or longer. Some specimens in the Mediterranean are several hundred years old and still producing. Plant a carob tree today and your grandchildren's grandchildren may harvest from it. The carbon mathematics favor carob dramatically. A mature carob tree sequesters approximately 50 kilograms of carbon dioxide per year. The tree requires no inputs that generate emissions. No tractors spreading fertilizer, no planes spraying pesticides, no refrigerated trucks maintaining cold chains. The carbon footprint of carob production approaches zero or goes negative when you account for sequestration. Compare this to the 34 kilograms of carbon dioxide generated by each kilogram of chocolate produced. The water mathematics tell the same story. Producing 1 kilogram of chocolate requires over 17,000 liters of water when you account for irrigation, processing, and supply chain operations. Producing 1 kilogram of carob requires rainfall and nothing else. In a world where water scarcity defines agricultural possibility, carob grows while other crops fail. The tree does not compete for resources. The tree makes do with what falls from the sky. London-based Win-Win launched what it claimed was the world's first cacao-free chocolate in 2022. Food Navigator reported in early 2026 that cocoa shortages are reshaping the entire industry. Carob appears in the conversation for the first time in decades, not as fake chocolate, as a climate-resilient replacement. Startups across Europe and North America are developing carob-based products, positioned correctly this time. Not as a chocolate substitute, as carob. The branding emphasizes what carob is rather than what it replaces. Caffeine-free, naturally sweet, Mediterranean heritage, climate positive. The marketing has matured beyond the mistakes of the 70s. Investment follows awareness. Venture capital has begun flowing into carob processing facilities. Agricultural technology companies are developing improved harvesting equipment. Plant breeders are creating new varieties optimized for mechanical harvest and consistent flavor profiles. The infrastructure for a carob industry is being built in real time, yet cultivation continues to decline. There has been a 65% reduction in carob growing area across the Mediterranean in the 21st century. The pattern persists even as climate makes carob more valuable and cocoa less viable. Why does a crop with documented health benefits, proven climate resilience, and growing market demand continue to shrink? What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter consciousness. Carob trees self-propagate. They require no annual seed purchase. They need no proprietary inputs. No corporation benefits from their spread. The system that promotes patentable, controllable commodities simply does not see what cannot be controlled. No conspiracy, no coordination, just economics. But the tree does not care about economics. For 4,000 years, carob has pursued a single agenda. It grew when the Phoenicians sailed. It grew when Rome fell. It grew when empires rose and collapsed across every shore of the Mediterranean. You can plant one this weekend. The tree does not care how you start. It only cares that you start. The chocolate industry generates $130 billion annually. The chocolate industry is collapsing under climate stress. The carob tree grows where nothing else survives. The carob tree produces sweetness without addiction. The carob tree asks for nothing but neglect. The question was never about taste. The question was always about who profits when you eat. Walk into any grocery store in America and you will find an entire aisle dedicated to plant milk, almond milk, oat milk, soy milk, coconut milk, rice milk, cashew milk. The options stretch for 20 feet, and the best seller by far is almond milk. Americans pour it into coffee, splash it over cereal, blend it into smoothies. It is marketed as the healthy choice, the planet-friendly choice, the modern choice. But here is what the carton does not tell you. A single glass of almond milk contains roughly 3 to 4 whole almonds. The rest is water, thickeners, and marketing. The calories are low because there is almost nothing in it. The protein is nearly zero. You are paying for flavored water in a pretty box. And the environmental cost is staggering. 1 liter of almond milk requires approximately 370 liters of fresh water to produce. Over 80% of the world's almonds come from one place, California, a state that has been battling drought for decades. Satellite images show the Central Valley sinking inches every year as farmers pump groundwater faster than nature can replace it. Almond orchards stretch to the horizon in neat, perfect rows, while rivers run dry and reservoirs shrink to mud. Then there is the allergy problem. Tree nut allergies affect millions of people worldwide. Almond milk triggers the exact same immune response as eating whole almonds. The fastest growing plant milk on the shelf is also one of the most common allergens in existence. And the industry's best answer to this problem is OAT milk, which carries its own gluten cross-contamination risks. So let me ask you something. What if there was a milk source that predates every option in that grocery aisle, one that contains no tree nut proteins, no gluten, no lactose, no soy, one that humans have been drinking for centuries, not decades, not a trend that started in a Brooklyn cafe, centuries? And what if you have walked past the plant that makes it 1,000 times without ever knowing what it was? There is, and you have. In 2014, a team of researchers at Oxford University published a study that reshaped how scientists understood early human diet. The lead researcher was Dr. Gabriele Macho. She was studying the eating habits of an ancient hominin called Paranthropus boisei, a species that lived in East Africa between 2.4 million and 1.4 million years ago. For decades, scientists assumed this creature ate hard nuts and seeds because of its enormous jaw muscles. They nicknamed it Nutcracker Man. Dr. Macho proved them all wrong. By studying the feeding patterns of modern baboons in Amboseli National Park in Kenya, she demonstrated that Nutcracker Man could have extracted around 2,000 calories a day in just 2.5 to 3 hours of foraging. Not from nuts, not from meat, from small, round tubers growing just beneath the surface of the soil. Those tubers belong to a sedge grass called Cyperus esculentus. The common name is the tiger nut. It is not a nut at all. It is a tuber, a small, wrinkled, marble-sized root that grows underground on a plant that looks like ordinary grass. Tiger nut. The archaeological record does not whisper this, it screams it. In the Nile Valley near Aswan in southern Egypt, archaeologists excavated a site called Wadi Kubaniya. In the sediment layers, they found preserved tiger nut rhizomes dating back 18,000 years. These were not decoration. The processing marks showed deliberate grinding, soaking, and consumption, the exact same methods people in West Africa still use today. The pharaohs knew about this tuber too. Tiger nuts were among the oldest cultivated plants in ancient Egypt. Archaeologists found them sealed inside the tombs of pharaohs, including King Tutankhamun. In the tomb of the Vizier Rekhmir from the 15th century before the Common Era, painted murals show workers measuring and grinding tiger nuts into flour. They shaped that flour into sacred cakes offered to the god Amun. They pressed the tubers for oil, and they soaked them in water and strained the liquid into a thick, creamy milk. This is not speculation. This is painted on the walls of tombs you can visit in Luxor today. The plant spread everywhere humans traveled, not because anyone planted it deliberately, because it grows itself. When the Moors crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and conquered the Iberian Peninsula in the 8th century, they carried tiger nuts with them from North Africa. Farmers in the sandy coastal soils around Valencia began cultivating the tubers. They soaked them, ground them, strained them, sweetened the liquid with sugar and cinnamon. They called the drink horchata de chufa. That was more than 800 years ago. And today, the streets of Valencia still have dedicated horchata bars called horchatarias. Families line up in the summer heat to drink chilled tiger nut milk, the way Americans line up for iced coffee at a drive-through window. This is not a wellness trend. This is an unbroken 8th century tradition with its own government-protected designation of origin. In Nigeria, the tuber is called AYA. Street vendors in Kano and Kaduna sell it fresh in enormous market stalls. A popular cold drink called kunun aya is made by blending the tubers with dates and straining the mixture through cloth. In Egypt, the tuber is known as hab el aziz, and vendors still sell bags of it as a snack on the streets of Cairo. In Ghana, in Mali, in Senegal, in Burkina Faso, the same tuber surfaces under different names, different languages, different continents, different centuries, same plant, same milk. Here is something most people never learn. When Spanish colonists arrived in Mexico, they craved the horchata they remembered from home. But tiger nuts did not grow in the New World, so they substituted rice. The horchata you buy at a Mexican restaurant today is a replacement for the original tiger nut version. The recipe crossed an ocean. The plant did not. And within a single generation, nobody in Mexico remembered what they were actually replacing. That is how fast knowledge disappears when the plant is not present to remind you. Now here is where the numbers become difficult to believe. Tiger nuts contain between 22 and 45% fat by dry weight. That sounds like a problem until you learn what kind of fat it is. The dominant fatty acid is oleic acid. It is the same monounsaturated fat that makes olive oil the gold standard of healthy cooking. This is a tuber growing in sand and mud with the fat profile of a Mediterranean olive. That combination does not exist anywhere else in the plant kingdom. The tubers are also packed with fiber, iron, magnesium, and phosphorus. They contain unusually high levels of vitamin E. They provide resistant starch that feeds beneficial bacteria in the gut. Researchers in Spain and Nigeria have documented protective effects against inflammation and oxidative stress. And the tubers contain meaningful amounts of the amino acid arginine, which plays a role in natural insulin function. Now compare that to what sits in your carton of almond milk. 3 almonds worth of nutrition dissolved in a cup of water. Tiger nut milk runs about 120 to 150 calories per cup. Unsweetened almond milk runs 30 to 50, but those tiger nut calories come from real food, resistant starch, monounsaturated fat, minerals your body actually absorbs. The almond milk is low calorie because there is almost nothing in the carton to count. And here is the fact that matters most for anyone with food allergies or sensitivities. The tiger nut is not a tree nut. It is not a legume. It is not a grain. It contains none of the 8 major allergens. No nut proteins, no gluten, no soy, no dairy. For people who react to every other option in that 20-foot grocery aisle, this tuber is one of the safest milk sources on Earth. So why is that aisle 20 feet long and this tuber nowhere on it? The answer is not complicated, it is just uncomfortable. The global plant milk market is worth over $20 billion a year. Almond milk commands the largest share in North America. That market depends on almonds grown in drought-stricken California, processed in industrial facilities, stabilized with gums and emulsifiers, sealed into shelf-stable cartons, loaded onto trucks, shipped across the country, and sold at $4 to $6 per half gallon. Every single step generates a transaction. Every step is someone's profit margin. Tiger nuts grow underground. Plant them once in sandy or wet soil and they spread through the earth on their own via underground rhizomes. The sedge grass needs no irrigation in moist ground. It needs no fertilizer. It needs no pesticide because almost nothing attacks it. And it cannot be patented because it is a wild plant growing freely in the public domain. A permanent milk source that spreads itself generates zero recurring revenue. Zero recurring revenue attracts zero corporate investment. Zero investment means zero marketing budget. Zero marketing means zero shelf space. And zero shelf space means 3 generations of families grow up choosing between almond, oat, and soy, never knowing there was an older, richer, allergen-free option growing in the dirt beneath their feet. This is not a conspiracy. This is economics. In the United States and across much of the developed world, Cyperus esculentus is officially classified as a noxious weed. Government agricultural agencies publish management guides on how to destroy it, herbicide recommendations, mechanical removal schedules, mowing protocols. County extension offices advise landowners to eradicate it from their property. They are spending taxpayer money to poison a plant that produces allergen-free milk with the fat profile of olive oil and an 18,000-year track record as human food. Search any scientific database for almond milk studies and you will find tens of thousands of papers. Universities compete for grants funded by the California almond industry. The research grows every year. Search for tiger nut milk studies and you will find a few hundred papers. Most of them come from Nigeria, Spain, or Brazil. Western agricultural institutions produced almost nothing. Scientists have written plainly that despite being cultivated around the world, the published research on tiger nuts remains insufficient. The plant that feeds itself was deemed unworthy of study because it could not generate shareholder value. But the tuber does not care about shareholder value. Making tiger nut milk at home is so simple, it almost feels like cheating. You need dried tiger nuts, water, a blender, and a straining bag or a clean piece of cloth. Start by soaking the dried tiger nuts in a bowl of water. They are rock hard when dry. Give them at least 12 hours, and 24 to 48 hours is better. The longer you soak them, the sweeter and creamier the final milk becomes. The tubers soften and swell and release their starch into the water. After soaking, drain the water. Add the softened tubers to a blender with fresh, clean water, about 1 cup of soaked tiger nuts to 3 or 4 cups of water depending on how thick you want it. Blend on high for 2 full minutes until the mixture turns smooth and white. Pour it through a nut milk bag or a piece of cheesecloth draped over a wide bowl and squeeze out every last drop. What comes through is a naturally sweet, thick, creamy white milk. No sugar needed, no stabilizers, no emulsifiers, no factory. If you want to make traditional Valencian horchata, toss a cinnamon stick and a splash of vanilla into the blender before you strain. Serve it over ice in a tall glass. You are now drinking the same recipe that families in Valencia have been making since the 13th century, and the leftover pulp in the straining bag is not waste. Spread it on a baking sheet, dry it in a low oven, grind it up, and you have tiger nut flour. It works in cookies, pancakes, and flatbreads with a slightly sweet taste. 1 tuber, 2 products, nothing thrown away. Tiger nut is not the only forgotten milk source worth rediscovering. Hemp seeds blend into milk in under 60 seconds with no soaking required. The fat is rich in omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids in a nearly ideal ratio. Sunflower seeds make a smooth, nut-free milk loaded with vitamin E, and they grow in any temperate garden bed with almost no effort. Pumpkin seeds produce a dense green milk packed with zinc and magnesium, and they work beautifully in savory soups and sauces. Every one of these can be made with a blender, a cloth, and 10 minutes of your time. Every single one predates the industrial plant milk aisle by centuries, but it is the tiger nut that tells the largest story. A tuber that fed early hominins on the savannas of East Africa 2 million years ago. It was sealed into the tombs of pharaohs along the Nile 3,000 years ago. It was carried across the Mediterranean by Moorish traders and turned into a national drink on the streets of Valencia. It crossed the Atlantic in the memories of colonists who forgot the original ingredient within a single generation. It grows right now, today, in wet ground and sandy soil and roadside drainage ditches across 6 continents. It is listed officially as a weed. It is sprayed with herbicide by maintenance crews who have no idea what they are destroying. The plant milk industry moves $20 billion a year. Factories crack almonds from depleted California aquifers. Trucks haul cartons across interstate highways. Grocery shelves fill up with water and gum and thickener sold at premium prices in cartons decorated with pictures of nature. And this tuber sits in the ground where it has always been. It costs almost nothing. It grows back every year without replanting. It spreads through the soil whether you want it to or not. Its milk is naturally sweet. Its fat matches olive oil. Its history reaches further back than agriculture itself. It does not need a brand. It does not need a factory. It does not need a barcode. It simply grows. Walk into any pharmacy today, look at the diabetes section. The shelves stretch longer every year. More glucose monitors, more insulin pens, more medications with names you cannot pronounce. Global diabetes cases have quadrupled since 1990. Over 800 million adults now live with this disease. The world spent more than $1 trillion on diabetes treatment in 2024 alone. That is 12% of all global health spending. 1 of every 8 deaths from non-communicable diseases traces back to obesity. The global sugar market sits at $70 billion annually. And while all of this unfolds, a solution has existed for centuries. Hidden, suppressed, deliberately ignored. In the highlands of Paraguay, along the border with Brazil, the Guarani people have cultivated a small green herb for over 1,000 years. They call it ka'ahe'e. In their language, it means sweet herb. The name fits perfectly. A single leaf placed on your tongue delivers sweetness that lasts for an hour. The Guarani did not use this plant merely for taste. They understood something far more important. This herb helped regulate blood sugar. It was diabetes medicine before diabetes became a modern epidemic. 500 years of traditional knowledge, 0 documented health problems, 0 side effects. Just a plant that grew wild in the forest and made everything it touched impossibly sweet. In 1887, a Swiss botanist named Moises Santiago Bertoni was exploring the eastern forests of Paraguay. He served as director of the College of Agriculture in Asunción. Local Guarani guides introduced him to a plant they considered sacred, Bertoni later wrote about this encounter. He described placing the smallest particle of leaf in his mouth and being surprised by the strange and extreme sweetness contained within. A fragment only a few square millimeters in size, he noted, suffices to keep the mouth sweet for an hour. Bertoni gave this plant its scientific name, Stevia rebaudiana. He documented everything: the growing conditions, the traditional uses, the remarkable properties. His research papers circulated through European scientific journals. Western science officially knew about this plant by 1899. Then nothing happened for decades. In 1931, two French chemists finally isolated the compounds that give this plant its sweetness. They identified molecules called steviol glycosides. These compounds are 250 to 300 times sweeter than table sugar. But here is what makes them truly remarkable. Human bodies cannot metabolize these glycosides. They pass through your system completely unchanged. No calories absorbed, no blood sugar spike, no insulin response. The sweetness is real. The metabolic impact is zero. The French chemists published their findings, the scientific community took note, and then, once again, nothing happened. The knowledge sat in journals. The plant remained obscure. 4 more decades passed. Let me explain the science in terms you can visualize. Imagine a key that fits perfectly into a lock on your tongue. The lock is a sweetness receptor. When sugar fits into this lock, your brain registers sweet. But sugar is a small key. It fits loosely. You need a lot of it to trigger a strong response. Now imagine a key 300 times larger. It fits the same lock but fills every groove perfectly. The response is overwhelming. That is what steviol glycosides do. They trigger your sweetness receptors with incredible efficiency. But unlike sugar, these molecules are too large and too stable for your digestive enzymes to break apart. Your body cannot convert them into energy. They deliver sensation without consequence. The compound is also heat stable. It does not break down when you cook with it. It is pH stable. Acids and bases do not destroy it. It does not ferment. Bacteria cannot feed on it. This means no tooth decay, no cavities. The perfect sweetener exists in nature. It requires no laboratory, no chemical synthesis, no industrial processing, just a leaf from a plant that self-propagates in almost any warm climate. In 1970, something remarkable happened in Japan. The Japanese government grew increasingly concerned about artificial sweeteners. Studies suggested links between saccharin and cancer. Japanese regulators responded decisively. They banned or strictly restricted synthetic sweeteners across the country. Food manufacturers faced a crisis. They needed alternatives. They found the answer in Paraguay. A consortium of Japanese food companies began importing stevia. They refined extraction techniques and they standardized production. By 1988, stevia products represented 41% of the entire Japanese sweetener market. Not a niche health food, not a specialty item. 41% of all potent sweeteners consumed in one of the world's largest economies came from this single plant. Japanese consumers drank stevia-sweetened beverages. They ate stevia-sweetened snacks. They cooked with stevia at home. No health crisis emerged. No epidemic of side effects. Just decades of safe, widespread use by tens of millions of people. Now consider what happened in America during the exact same period. In the mid-1980s, stevia was gaining traction in the United States natural foods industry. Health food stores carried stevia-sweetened teas. Weight loss products featured stevia extracts. Small companies built businesses around this remarkable plant. The future looked promising. Then everything changed. In 1991, someone filed a trade complaint with the Food and Drug Administration. The complaint arrived anonymously. No name attached, no organization identified, just an accusation that stevia was unsafe. The FDA reviewed that anonymous complaint. They did not conduct extensive research. They did not consult the decades of Japanese safety data. They did not examine the centuries of indigenous use. Instead, they issued an import alert. Stevia was banned from entering the United States. The justification rested on a single category of study: Researchers had given laboratory rats enormous doses of stevia extract and found DNA mutations. What the Food and Drug Administration did not publicize was the dosage involved. The amounts given to those rats would be equivalent to a human drinking thousands of cups of stevia-sweetened beverages every single day. No human could physically consume that quantity. The study design guaranteed a negative result. Meanwhile, for centuries, the Guarani people had consumed stevia daily without showing any side effects whatsoever. The timing of this ban deserves scrutiny. In 1985, 6 years before the stevia ban, a company called Sunrider International imported stevia into the United States. The response was immediate and aggressive. Apparently prompted by protests from NutraSweet Company, the maker of aspartame, the United States Department of Agriculture forced Sunrider to destroy its entire stevia supply. They burned it. They called the product adulterated. NutraSweet had recently acquired an extremely lucrative patent on aspartame. That patent generated billions in revenue. A naturally occurring plant that anyone could grow threatened that entire business model. No patent would be awarded to something found in nature. The makers of NutraSweet, which at the time was owned by Monsanto, formally requested that the Food and Drug Administration require extensive testing of stevia extracts. The sugar industry joined the effort. They had their own ulterior motive. Stevia would impact their market share. They lobbied against approval. Two of the most powerful food industry forces in America aligned against a plant that indigenous communities had used safely for a millennium. The suppression went beyond import restrictions. The FDA targeted companies that tried to petition for stevia approval. Celestial Seasonings, the herbal tea company, submitted paperwork seeking generally recognized as safe status for stevia. The FDA refused to process their petition. Traditional medicinals tried as well. The American Herbal Products Association presented studies. Even Lipton, one of the largest tea companies in the world, attempted to provide safety data. The FDA ignored their usual protocol and refused to even file the petitions for approval. The door was not just closed, it was sealed. The suppression extended to information itself. When importers tried to bring stevia cookbooks and educational materials into the country, FDA agents seized and destroyed them. Books burned in America in the 1990s because they contained information about a plant that threatened corporate profits. Think about this pattern carefully. In Japan, stevia captured 41% of the sweetener market with zero health problems documented over decades. In America, during the exact same time period, stevia was classified as an unsafe food additive requiring search and seizure operations. Same plant, same science, different economic interests at stake. Critics argued that the lack of negative data should not have warranted an outright ban. Other sweeteners with far more questionable safety profiles remained freely available on American shelves. Aspartame, synthesized in a laboratory, approved. Saccharin, linked to cancer in studies, approved with warning labels. Stevia, used safely for 1,000 years, banned completely. The sugar lobby has historically wielded considerable power over food regulations. Industry pressure contributed to what many experts now consider a biased evaluation. What cannot be patented cannot be controlled. What cannot be controlled cannot generate reliable corporate profits. What does not generate corporate profits does not receive marketing budgets. What is not marketed does not enter public consciousness. 3 generations of Americans grew up never hearing the word stevia. Not because anyone actively hid it, because no one profited from revealing it. Then something remarkable happened in 2008. Coca-Cola needed a natural, low-calorie sweetener. Consumer demand was shifting. People wanted alternatives to sugar without the synthetic taste of artificial options. Cargill, one of the largest food ingredient companies in the world, partnered with Coca-Cola to find a solution. They identified Rebiana, a purified component of stevia, as their candidate. Coca-Cola filed 24 patent applications related to this ingredient, 24 separate patents on processes to extract and refine what the Guarani had been using freely for centuries. As soon as Coca-Cola and Cargill were ready to commercialize stevia, the FDA miraculously produced research it could believe in. Cargill and Coca-Cola submitted 12 studies supporting the safety of their stevia extract. Those studies appeared in a respected journal called Food and Chemical Toxicology. Every single study was authored by someone with financial ties to either Coca-Cola or Cargill. The same plant that had been unsafe for 17 years was suddenly, instantly safe. In 2008, the FDA granted generally recognized as safe status to highly purified stevia extracts. The ban was effectively over. But notice what was approved. Not the plant, not the leaves that the Guarani had chewed for 1,000 years, only the processed, patented corporate extract. Cargill launched a product called Truvia. The marketing was brilliant. Natural sweetener from the stevia leaf. Images of green plants and natural goodness. What the marketing did not emphasize was the actual composition. Rabayana makes up less than 1% of each Truvia packet. Although the company website claims the sweetener is retrieved from the stevia leaf by soaking it in water, the patent held by Coca-Cola reveals the truth. It takes 40 steps to extract the desired molecule, 40 industrial processes to isolate 1% of the final product. The deception did not go unnoticed. In 2014, Cargill settled a class action lawsuit alleging false and misleading advertising. The settlement cost $6.1 million, a small price for a product that became the second best-selling sugar substitute in America, behind only Splenda. Here is the bitter irony. The Guarani people, whose traditional knowledge made all of this possible, have never been consulted or compensated in any way. Their sacred plant appears in corporate marketing materials. Images of indigenous traditions decorate packaging. But the Guarani see nothing from the billions in profits. As one community leader stated, these companies took our traditional knowledge and are using it to make vast profits. Paraguay, where stevia originated, grows fewer than 6,000 acres annually. China now produces 80% of the world's stevia crop. The knowledge belonged to the Guarani. The profits belong to multinational corporations. By 2013, 47% of Americans had a stevia-containing product in their homes. Almost none of them knew the plant came from Guarani land. The regulatory situation today remains absurd. In the United States, extracts of certain high-purity steviol glycosides have generally recognized as safe status, but stevia leaf itself, the actual plant, does not have FDA approval for use in food. Whole leaf stevia and crude stevia extracts remain subject to import alerts. They are not permitted for use as sweeteners. Read that again. You can buy a packet of processed 40-step extracted stevia product that contains less than 1% stevia at any grocery store. But the actual leaf that indigenous communities have consumed safely for 1,000 years is still regulated by the FDA. The plant is controlled. The corporate extract is approved. The global stevia market stands at $930 million in 2025. Projections suggest it will reach $1.56 billion by 2030. That sounds impressive until you compare it to sugar's $70 billion market. Stevia represents less than 2% of sugar's value. The suppression worked. But here is what the industry does not want you to understand. You do not need their packets. You do not need their 40-step extraction process. You do not need their corporate version of a plant that grows wild in South American forests. Growing stevia at home is remarkably simple. Start with a small transplant from your local nursery or order seeds online for just a few dollars. Stevia prefers well-drained soil and at least 6 hours of sunlight daily. Plant it after the last frost when soil temperatures reach 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Space plants 12 inches apart in your garden bed or use a container at least 12 inches wide. Water consistently, but never let the roots sit in soggy soil. Stevia hates wet feet. Pinch back the growing tips when plants reach 8 inches tall to encourage bushier growth and more leaf production. Feed monthly with a balanced organic fertilizer. In zones 9 through 11, your stevia will return year after year as a perennial. Everywhere else, treat it as an annual, or bring potted plants indoors before the first frost. Harvesting could not be easier. Pick individual leaves anytime you need sweetness for your tea or cooking. For larger harvests, cut the stems back by half just before the plant flowers in late summer. This is when the leaves contain the highest concentration of sweet compounds. Hang the cut stems upside down in a warm, dry location for several days. Once completely dried, strip the leaves from the stems and crush them into a fine powder using a coffee grinder or mortar and pestle. Store this powder in an airtight jar away from light. 1 tablespoon of dried stevia powder equals roughly 1 cup of sugar in sweetening power. A single healthy plant produces enough leaves to replace several pounds of sugar throughout the growing season. The Guarani method still works perfectly. No extraction facility required. The question was never whether this plant is safe. Centuries of use in South America answered that. Decades of use in Japan confirmed it. Scientific studies of stevia's effects on the human body have shown no side effects. Japanese populations consumed stevia in large quantities for years with no adverse reports documented. The real question is why America spent 17 years pretending otherwise. The answer is not conspiracy, the answer is economics. What cannot be patented cannot generate reliable corporate revenue. What cannot generate revenue does not receive marketing support. What is not marketed does not enter public awareness. But the plant does not care about patents. It does not care about market share. It does not care about FDA import alerts, anonymous trade complaints, or corporate extraction processes. Stevia cares about one thing: production. For 1,000 years, this plant has spread wherever people carried it. The Guarani shared it with explorers. Explorers shared it with scientists. Scientists documented it for anyone willing to read. The knowledge was never hidden. It was simply not profitable to share. You know now. You know that a sweetener 300 times more potent than sugar exists in nature. You know that it has 0 calories and 0 glycemic impact. You know that millions of people consumed it safely for decades while America banned it. You know that corporations blocked it until they could patent the extraction process. You know that you can grow it yourself, harvest it yourself, use it yourself, and never pay another cent to the industry that tried to keep it from you. The seed companies will not tell you. The sweetener corporations will not tell you. The sugar industry certainly will not tell you. But the plant waits. It has waited for 1,000 years in Guarani villages. It waited 17 years through an American ban. It will wait on your windowsill until you are ready. Walk into any grocery store today, find the vanilla extract, and check the price tag. A small bottle costs more than most spices on the entire shelf. Now check the label. 95% of vanilla products are artificially flavored. They do not contain real vanilla at all. They contain synthetic vanillin derived from wood pulp and petroleum. You are paying luxury prices for industrial chemistry. The real vanilla orchid is one of the most labor-intensive crops on Earth. It grows only in specific tropical climates. Each flower blooms for just a few hours, and each blossom must be pollinated by hand. There are no machines for this, no shortcuts, no automation. A single vanilla bean will be touched by human hands hundreds of times before it reaches your kitchen, perhaps thousands. As much as 80% of the world vanilla supply comes from the mountainous regions of Madagascar. Smallholder farmers work plots smaller than a football field. They painstakingly pollinate each vanilla blossom by hand using a technique invented by a 12-year-old enslaved boy named Edmund Albius in 1841. His method has never been improved upon. Nearly 2 centuries later, farmers still use the same wooden stick technique he created. Between 2013 and 2018, international vanilla prices increased tenfold. A boom driven by low harvest years, rising demand for natural flavoring, and speculation by intermediary buyers. Vanilla farmers became targets. Organized theft rings moved into the SAVO region. Farmers were killed attempting to protect their crops. Would-be thieves were executed in forms of mob justice. Villages formed armed militias to guard their fields. This was not random violence. This was the predictable result of a cartel system that has controlled vanilla for over 60 years. In 1962, Madagascar formed an alliance with the Comoros Islands and Reunion. They called it the Vanilla Alliance. Together, these 3 territories supplied 3/4 of the world's vanilla market. The objective was simple: control supply, manipulate prices, extract maximum profit from the second most expensive spice on earth. A company called Univanille dominated this cartel structure. Export quotas and licenses were politically allocated. This created market monopoly. The farmers who did all the labor received less than 8% of the vanilla price. The rest disappeared into export taxation, middlemen fees, and cartel profits. Today, the vanilla market is valued at over $29 billion. Industry projections suggest it will reach $45 billion by 2032, growing at nearly 6% annually. Billions of dollars flow through a system built on artificial scarcity and information control. But here is where the story takes a turn that the vanilla industry does not want you to know. In 1858, a French chemist named Theodore Nicolas Goblet isolated the compound that gives vanilla its distinctive smell and taste. He called it vanillin. That was the molecule, the actual chemical responsible for what your brain recognizes as vanilla flavor. By 1874, German scientists Ferdinand Tiemann and Wilhelm Harman had figured out how to synthesize vanillin artificially. They founded a company called Harman and Reimer, and they started the first industrial production of synthetic vanilla. Today, that company is part of Symrise, one of the largest flavor corporations on the planet. Here is the critical detail. Vanillin is just one molecule, and it is not the only molecule that triggers the vanilla response in your brain. There is another compound, a chemical cousin. It activates the exact same olfactory receptor in your nose. The receptor is called OR2B11. When this receptor fires, your brain interprets the signal as sweet, warm, and comforting as vanilla. This compound is called coumarin. Coumarin smells like vanilla, but more sophisticated, more complex, more interesting. Perfumers have known this for over a century. The flavor industry has known this for decades. And there is a plant that produces coumarin in abundance, a plant that grows like a weed, a plant that has been consumed by hundreds of millions of Europeans for over 500 years. In 1954, the Food and Drug Administration banned coumarin as a food additive in the United States. The official reason was hepatotoxicity in rodents, liver damage in rats and mice. But here is what the Food and Drug Administration did not emphasize. Humans metabolize coumarin completely differently than rodents. Rodents convert coumarin mostly to 3,4-coumarin epoxide. This is toxic. This is unstable. This damages their livers. Humans convert coumarin mainly to 7-hydroxy-coumarin. This is a compound of much lower toxicity. No adverse effect has been directly measured in humans, even in large doses. The Food and Drug Administration banned a vanilla alternative based on rat studies. Meanwhile, Europeans kept consuming it for 5 more decades, with no health crisis, no liver epidemic, no warnings. The Food and Drug Administration still lists coumarin among substances generally prohibited from direct addition or use as human food. But there is an exception buried in the regulations. One natural additive containing coumarin is allowed in alcoholic beverages only. That additive is sweet woodruff. The plant is called Galium odoratum, sweet woodruff, sweet-scented bedstraw. It is a flowering perennial in the family Rubiaceae, native to much of Europe from Spain to Siberia. It has grown in European forests and gardens for over 2,000 years. Its specific name, odoratum, means fragrant. The plant is strongly scented. When you harvest it and let it dry, it releases a sweet, vanilla-like aroma. This fragrance comes from natural coumarins stored in the plant tissue. The drying process releases them into the air. In Germany, they make Maibolel, or May wine, white wine infused with sweet woodruff, harvested in spring. Families have made this for generations. It tastes of fresh mown grass and vanilla, and it marks the arrival of warm weather. It is tradition. In Germany, they also make Gotterspeise, food of the gods, also called Wackel pudding or Wiggle pudding. It is a sweet woodruff-flavored gelatin dessert topped with vanilla sauce. Children eat this at birthday parties. Adults eat it for nostalgia. Nobody worries about their liver. In Berlin, they flavor wheat beer with sweet woodruff syrup. They call it Berliner Weisse mit Schuss. a green-colored summer drink served in bowl-shaped glasses. Tourists photograph it. Locals drink it without thinking twice. 500 million Europeans have access to this plant. They know what it tastes like. They know it is safe. They have been consuming it since the Middle Ages, when monks used it as a strewing herb to freshen monastery floors. They stored it in linen cupboards to repel moths. They used it to treat wounds and cuts. Documentation fills medieval herbals and monastery records. The flowering tops and aerial parts have been traditionally used to treat circulation problems, venous disorders, jaundice, hemorrhoids, and nervous agitation. Modern researchers have started to validate some of these uses. In a study published in the journal Antioxidants, researchers found that sweet woodruff extracts exhibited anti-inflammatory activity. The extracts effectively reduced M1 macrophage populations involved in inflammatory responses. In rat studies, the plant inhibited carrageenan-induced paw edema by 25%. This compared favorably with indomethacin, a standard pharmaceutical anti-inflammatory. The Germans banned industrial usage of sweet woodruff for sweets in 1974 based on those same rat studies, but they never banned home use. They never banned May wine. They never banned the wiggle pudding because they understood the difference between feeding concentrated extracts to rodents and humans eating reasonable amounts of a traditional food. Now here's the part that matters for your garden. Sweet woodruff is one of the most aggressive self-seeders in the plant kingdom. Given the chance, it will naturalize. It can be found growing happily on abandoned home sites decades after humans left. It spreads through slender rhizomes, forming soft mats that expand gradually every year. It readily self-seeds and can quickly spread around the garden. This is not a delicate orchid requiring precise tropical conditions and hand pollination. This is a weed that wants to grow. Sweet woodruff thrives in USD A zones 3 through 8. This covers most of the continental United States and equivalent climates in Europe. It prefers moist, rich soil in partial to full shade, but it will tolerate dry and less than optimal soils. It tolerates heavy shade. It even tolerates being planted near black walnut trees, which produce chemicals that kill most other plants. It is virtually pest-free, deer-resistant, naturally elegant, undemanding, one of the most versatile, low-maintenance ground covers for shaded spaces. The exact spots in your yard where nothing else wants to grow. Plant it once. Let it establish. Let it spread. Every spring, it returns without permission. Every spring, it expands its territory. Every spring, it produces more vanilla-flavored leaves than you could possibly use. Harvest the leaves throughout the growing season. Let them wilt for a few hours. The vanilla scent intensifies as they dry. The coumarin releases from the plant tissue and fills the air. Use them fresh in drinks. Dry them for tea. Infuse them in cream for desserts. Store the dried leaves for winter. Some foragers call it wild vanilla. Some call it sweet gallium. The names vary, but the chemistry stays the same. The same coumarin, the same receptor activation, the same warm, sweet comfort that your brain interprets as vanilla. The question is not, why did Europe hide this plant? Europe did not hide anything. German grandmothers make May wine every spring. French herbalists stock it on open shelves. British gardeners grow it as ground cover under their trees. The knowledge was always there, always public, always available. The question is why Western food systems never integrated it. Why 15,000 studies on fish oil and 400 on alternative omega sources. Why a $29 billion vanilla industry and almost no awareness of a free alternative. The answer is not conspiracy. The answer is economics. A plant that self-seeds cannot generate repeat seed sales. A flavor compound banned from processed food cannot threaten industrial vanilla suppliers. A crop that needs no inputs needs no input suppliers. A harvest that requires no processing cannot generate processing revenue. The FDA ban on coumarin did not protect American health. Americans have never experienced a coumarin health crisis. The ban protected the synthetic vanillin industry. It protected the Madagascar vanilla cartel. It protected everyone who profits from the artificial scarcity of vanilla flavor. What cannot be patented cannot be controlled. What cannot be controlled cannot generate reliable revenue streams. What cannot generate revenue does not get marketed. 3 generations of Americans grew up without ever hearing the words sweet woodruff. Not because anyone actively hid it, because no one profited from revealing it. But you know now. You know that a vanilla alternative exists. You know it self-seeds forever. You know that 500 million Europeans consume it regularly. You know that modern research validates traditional safety. You know that you can grow it in shade where nothing else survives. You know that one planting creates permanent flavor infrastructure. The vanilla cartel will not tell you. The synthetic flavor industry will not tell you. The FDA certainly will not tell you. The information threatens too many revenue streams, but the plant does not care about revenue streams. It cares about spreading. It cares about establishing itself wherever shade and moisture permit. For 2,000 years, sweet woodruff has pursued this single agenda. It will continue for 2,000 more. Walk into any health food store in America today. You will find almond butter, cashew butter, and peanut butter in 17 different varieties. But the 2 seeds with the highest nutritional density in North America sit on the bottom shelf. Sometimes they are not there at all. Most shoppers walk past without a second glance. They do not know what they are missing. They were never taught. The first seed is the sunflower, the second is the pumpkin. Together, they represent 5,000 years of food technology that Western civilization ignored. Not because the science was hidden, because no corporation could patent a seed you grind at home. In what is now present-day Arizona and New Mexico, Native American farmers domesticated the sunflower around 3000 BC. Archaeologists believe this happened before the domestication of corn. Those early plant breeders selected for larger seeds over generations, increasing seed size by 1,000% through careful cultivation. They ground those seeds into a creamy spread they called seed balls, a portable, nutrient-dense food for long journeys. This was butter, 5,000 years before European settlers arrived with their dairy cows. The Hopi people cultivated sunflowers in terraced gardens across the desert Southwest. The Cherokee grew them along river valleys in what is now Tennessee. The Hidatsa maintained seed varieties along the Missouri River for centuries. Every major agricultural tribe knew these plants, and everyone processed the seeds into food. When European colonizers arrived, they brought cattle. They brought dairy traditions from the British Isles and Northern Europe. They brought an economic system built around animal husbandry. Indigenous knowledge was not suppressed through conspiracy, it was simply ignored, and it was replaced by systems that required continuous inputs. Seeds that replant themselves generate no repeat revenue. Cows that need constant feeding, watering, and milking generate endless transactions. Now let us examine what modern science has confirmed about these seeds. Sunflower seeds contain the highest concentration of vitamin E among all nuts and seeds ever tested. A single 1-ounce serving provides 69% of your daily requirement. 1 cup of sunflower seeds exceeds 100% of the daily vitamin E recommendation. According to national health surveys from 2001 and 2002, more than 90% of American adults do not meet even the estimated average requirement of 12 milligrams per day. 9 out of 10 people walking through any grocery store in America are vitamin E deficient. The solution sits in a bag on the shelf behind them. Researchers at the USDA Agricultural Research Service conducted direct comparisons between sunflower seed butter and other nut butters. Their findings were published in peer-reviewed journals. Sunflower seed butter contains significantly more monounsaturated fat than peanut butter or almond butter. It contains roughly half the saturated fat of peanut butter. It exceeds both in magnesium, phosphorus, zinc, copper, and selenium content. The data is not ambiguous. The nutritional superiority is measurable. A study involving more than 6,000 adults found that those who consumed sunflower seeds at least 5 times per week had 32% lower levels of C-reactive protein. This is a key marker of inflammation. Chronic inflammation underlies heart disease, diabetes, and numerous autoimmune conditions. The participants did not take supplements. They ate seeds. Now consider the pumpkin seed. The World Health Organization identified pumpkin seeds as one of the best food sources for zinc and magnesium on Earth. Not a supplement, not a pharmaceutical formulation. A seed that grows on a vine in backyard gardens across every temperate climate zone. 1 ounce of pumpkin seeds provides 39% of the daily magnesium requirement. The same serving delivers 18% of daily zinc needs. These are not minor nutrients. Magnesium participates in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the human body. Zinc is essential for immune function, wound healing, and protein synthesis. A large observational study tracked participants over 28 years. Those who consumed the highest amounts of magnesium had a 15% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those with the lowest intake. The connection between magnesium intake and metabolic health is now well established in the scientific literature. Research published in peer-reviewed journals has documented that pumpkin seeds and pumpkin seed oil demonstrate significant effects on cardiovascular health. A 12-week study involving 35 postmenopausal women found that pumpkin seed oil supplementation reduced diastolic blood pressure by 7% and increased HDL cholesterol by 16%. These are the outcomes that pharmaceutical companies spend billions trying to achieve through synthetic compounds. Pumpkin seeds are also one of the richest natural sources of L-arginine. This conditionally essential amino acid plays critical roles in blood vessel function and cardiovascular health. So here is the question that demands an answer. Why do 90% of Americans remain vitamin E deficient when sunflower seeds sit in every grocery store? Why does the World Health Organization endorse pumpkin seeds while most Western consumers have never made pumpkin seed butter? Follow the money. The global butter market reached $56 billion in 2025. 270 million dairy cows are maintained worldwide to supply this industry. The infrastructure is staggering: land for grazing, land for growing feed crops, water systems for the animals, methane mitigation efforts, cold chain logistics from farm to store, processing facilities, packaging plants, distribution networks. Livestock production accounts for 14 to 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions. More than 30% of worldwide methane emissions come from cattle. More than 2/3 of all agricultural land grows feed for livestock. Only 8% produces food for direct human consumption. The inefficiency is structural. 21 pounds of input for 1 pound of output. Now consider the alternative. A single sunflower head can contain up to 2,000 seeds. The plants grow in USDA zones 3 through 10. This covers nearly the entire continental United States. They tolerate poor soil. They tolerate drought. They require minimal care after establishment. 1 planting season, thousands of seeds, years of butter production. A food processor costs less than $100. The processing time is 15 minutes. No cold chain required. No industrial facility. No patents possible. No corporate gatekeeping. This is why the research funding flows elsewhere. Search any medical database for fish oil studies and you will find over 15,000 published papers. Search for sunflower seed oil studies and you will find only a fraction of that number. That ratio is not based on scientific merit, it is based on commercial interest. Fish oil requires industrial extraction, it requires encapsulation, it requires quality control, cold storage, and branded packaging. Every step in that supply chain generates revenue. Every step can be controlled. A seed you grow in your backyard cannot be controlled. A butter you grind in your kitchen cannot be patented. The economic system that promotes profitable interventions simply overlook the profitable plants, not through conspiracy, through structure. Companies fund research that supports their products. They do not fund research that makes their products unnecessary. Universities pursue grants from available sources, and those sources favor patentable interventions. The funding flows to what can be owned. Growing sunflowers requires minimal expertise. Plant seeds directly in soil after the last frost. Space them 12 to 18 inches apart. Water occasionally during establishment. Allow the flower heads to mature fully on the stalk. When the back of the head turns brown and the seeds are plump, harvest the entire head. Dry it in a warm location. Remove the seeds by rubbing the head over a container. Store dried seeds in airtight containers. They remain viable for years. To make butter, add seeds to a food processor. Process for 10 to 15 minutes, scraping down the sides periodically. The seeds will progress from crumbled to paste to smooth butter. Add salt if desired. Store at room temperature for weeks or refrigerate for months. One harvest provides a year of butter. No subscription required. Pumpkin seeds follow similar patterns. Grow any winter squash variety. Some varieties produce pepitas, seeds without shells. Harvest mature pumpkins in fall. Scoop out seeds. Rinse and dry them thoroughly. Roast lightly if desired. Process into butter using the same method as sunflower seeds. A single pumpkin produces hundreds of seeds. A small garden patch produces dozens of pumpkins. The multiplication is exponential. The cost after initial planting approaches zero. Both seed butters offer something that peanut butter cannot. They are free from common allergens. Schools that ban peanuts and tree nuts often permit sunflower and pumpkin seed products. Families with allergies can finally send their children to school with sandwiches. The practical applications extend beyond nutrition into daily life. The question was never whether these plants could make butter. Native Americans proved that 5,000 years ago in the Arizona desert. The Cherokee proved it in the Tennessee valleys. The Hidatsa proved it along the Missouri River. The question is why modern systems failed to notice. Why are there 270 million cows when seeds accomplish the same purpose with a fraction of the resources? Why $56 billion flows to an industry requiring 21 pounds of input for every single pound of output? The answer is structure. Economic systems see what benefits economic systems. Research follows funding. Funding follows patents. Patents require control. Seeds that self-propagate cannot be controlled. They spread. They reproduce. They naturalize in gardens across continents. They become free. What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter consciousness. 3 generations of Western consumers grew up without ever hearing the words seed butter. Not because anyone deliberately hid it, but because no corporation profited from revealing it. But you know now. You know that Native Americans made butter from seeds 5,000 years ago. You know that sunflower seeds contain more vitamin E than any nut or seed ever tested. You know that the World Health Organization endorses pumpkin seeds for zinc and magnesium. You know that a single sunflower head produces 2,000 seeds. You know that a food processor and 15 minutes stand between you and independence from the dairy supply chain. The seed companies will not advertise this. The dairy industry will not mention it. The supplement manufacturers selling vitamin E capsules will not bring it up. But the sunflower does not care about market share. It cares about reproduction. It cares about spreading. It has grown on this continent since before recorded history. It will continue growing long after the current economic systems collapse and reform and collapse again. 5,000 years of proven nutrition, sitting in packets at every garden center, waiting for someone to remember what the ancestors knew. These plants proved sweetness does not require purchase. The ingredients were never hidden. The recipes were never lost. The only thing missing was the awareness that you never needed the store at all.